Let's hear from business right now. I want to bring in W.L. Ross and Company Chairman and Chief Strategy Officer Wilbur Ross. Wilbur, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria.
From a business standpoint, you've got to obviously create jobs and do a balance sheet. What plan do you think is better?
Well, I think Hillary's plan, according to the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation, would shrink the economy and cost 311,000 jobs. That's not from the Trump campaign. That's from the Tax Foundation. Second, she isn't dealing at all with the problem of bad imports that directly take jobs from America. She's not dealing with that. She hasn't met a trade deal that she didn't like, and they've all been job destructive. So what she's really trying to do is invent the fiction of infrastructure to patch up this broken system. Problem with infrastructure is, number one, there are no shovel-ready jobs. Remember Obama, giant infrastructure plan, shovel-ready jobs? Did you ever see one of those shovel-ready jobs materialize? I didn't.
Yeah.
What'll really happen is that money will just get sucked up into other things. Yeah. As to becoming a clean energy superpower, that's an oxymoronic term. There is no superpower out of clean energy. It's a fiction. All it will do is raise the cost of energy, which already costs the average American family $5,000 a year. What does she think that's going to do to consumer spending?
Yeah, and the other thing is taxes, right? So she's raising taxes. I'm trying to figure out, Anthony Scaramucci, where it is that the Clinton plan helps small business. Because she said she wants to help small business, but at the same time, she says she's raising taxes on individual and business income. So how does that help small business?
Oh, it'll make big businesses smaller. That's how she will help small businesses.
Well, I mean, and to Wilbur's point, the smaller businesses are going to be taxed at around 50%. Because at the end of the day, it flows through to the individual, Maria, and those taxes are just going up ridiculously high. My question to Wilbur, though, is that you and I both have studied these plans. You've been in business for half of a century. Tell me what we're missing in terms of the communication as fellow Republicans, that we should be winning this race 60-40 in my mind. So what is it that we're missing?
Well, I think one of the things we're missing is the fact is that there's only one segment that will really pay more tax under the Trump plan, and that's people like me who have carried interest, because we're going to be taxed at the 33%. And that's higher than the tax rate we have now. So it's an interesting contrast that here you have the Republican is going to effectively raise taxes to people like me, which is fine, because I think Donald will spend the money wisely, so I don't mind paying a little more tax. Whereas Hillary is not dealing with that issue at all.
Well, she's still going to raise it.
Except by raising everybody's taxes.
Right. Shelby, what about that?
Well, I have a question about trade. Trade is such a flashpoint. We saw people with TPP signs at both the RNC and the DNC. But Trump scares a lot of Republicans, fiscally conservative Republicans, when he talks about taxing goods from China or imposing these huge tariffs. Does he know specifically what he wants to renegotiate when it comes to NAFTA?
Sure.
Does he have a backup plan for TPP?
Sure. Well, first of all, let's talk about the TPP, and let's talk about the fact that there's already $2 trillion trade deficit with those countries that are in TPP without them getting the new tax advantage. Further, there are plenty of loopholes in the TPP. For example, in automotive, a majority of the content of a car could come from outside the TPP countries, notably China, which is not a signatory, and yet be imported into Mexico, assembled there, come into the U.S. free of Mexican tax, free of U.S. tax. That's a weird idea of building a trade bloc when you have it so porous that you can let third parties benefit from it.
Look, I think that redoing trade deals is fine if America can get a better situation. But I think people are nervous about doing everything over from scratch all at once. Will that be a disruptive force in the economy if you redo NAFTA, if you redo China, if you redo the deal with Mexico all at once? Or is he not proposing to do all of this together?
Well, first of all, let's see what he actually said.
Okay.
The left-wing press quotes about the 45% tariff on China.
And he walked back from that. He never even said that it's going to be 45.
Here's what he actually said in his trade speech. If it turns out that the Chinese are found to have been manipulating their currency by as much as 45%, and if they aren't willing to negotiate, we may have to go as far as to impose a 45% tariff as a negotiating measure.
Yeah.
Now, is that a wild thing? No. It's simply explaining the kind of negotiating posture he'd begin to take.
I think that's a really smart idea. Let's talk about infrastructure for a second. You said that there are no shovel-ready jobs, but Cheryl, earlier you mentioned this is going to be the crux of her plan today.
I think what we're going to hear mostly from her today is I'm going to stimulate the economy and create jobs. Shovel-ready projects, $275 million infrastructure plan. But we've heard this before. We've seen this before from President Obama. It seems to me that this is more of the same.
And all the money comes from raising taxes, like the Buffett rule, or anyone with more than $5 million in income.
Sure. Well, there are a couple of problems with it. One, there are no shovel-ready projects. There never have been, there never will be. And with all the new rules and regulations that Obama has included in the hundreds of executive orders and such, it'll take years before any shovel gets into the ground anyway. So that's number one problem. The number two problem, if you build a bridge to nowhere, you get the one-time shot of the jobs, and then you get stuck with the cost of maintaining it for the rest of its life. So again, it's an illusion. What's wrong with America is that the only thing that she's really been effectively importing is favors to foreigners in return for contributions to the Clinton Foundation.
Do you think that's going to resonate with voters? Because we talk about this a lot. I don't know if it's actually having an impact. It was having an impact.
Well, I think it is, especially with these new revelations about emails and late-night phone calls to people in the State Department. How do you explain that? Do normal citizens get to make a late-night call to a high official in the State Department?
Right.
No.
Or possibly the President of the United States,
Well,
if she wins this election. I mean, it's an ongoing issue. It's not something that's going away.
Yeah. And there is an investigation underway, but you have to wonder when you get the results of an FBI investigation.
The Justice Department is not taking that recommendation.
How many investigations does it take before people conclude where there's smoke, there's fire?
Yeah.
Is it 10, 20, 100 investigations? How many does it take before people catch on to the joke that there's something wrong going on there? She's the most investigated public official in the history of the United States.
It's quite extraordinary, actually.
It's amazing. I wonder that she has the strength to do anything else.
Yeah. Well, good to see you. Thanks so much for weighing in. Really important points you brought up today. Wilbur Ross joining us. Still